if I told you that giving away your last meal could change your entire life? Today I'm sharing a story that will completely shift how you think about kindness, and by the end, you'll understand why the universe always finds a way to reward those who give from the heart. This incredible tale takes us to a humble village where an ordinary man discovered an extraordinary truth about karma that most people never realize. His name was David, and what happened to him proves that when you act with pure compassion, the universe conspires to bless you in ways you never imagined. David lived simply with his wife Sarah in their modest home. He worked tirelessly in the fields, earning just enough to get by. But here's what made David different from everyone else in his village. He had an unstoppable urge to help others, even when he barely had enough for himself. Every single day, David would encounter someone in need. A stray dog searching for scraps, a weary traveler passing through, an elderly neighbor struggling with groceries. And every single time, without hesitation, David would give whatever he had. He'd share his lunch with hungry animals, offer his earnings to struggling families, open his home to strangers who needed shelter. His wife Sarah constantly worried about this generous spirit. She'd watch their food disappear, their savings dwindle, and their own needs go unmet because of David's giving heart. Night after night, she'd express her concerns, saying they needed to think about their own survival first. But David always responded with the same gentle wisdom. When someone is suffering, how can we turn away? The universe sees everything we do. Now here's where the story takes an incredible turn that will give you chills. One scorching afternoon, as David rested at home after a long day of work, a feeble voice called out from their front door. Sarah peered through the window and sighed deeply, knowing what was coming next. Another person in need, another opportunity for their already strained resources to be stretched even thinner.
But David, as always, rushed to answer the call.
When he opened the door, he found an elderly wanderer standing there. The man's clothes were torn and dusty. His face weathered by countless miles of travel, and exhaustion was written in every line of his features. This wasn't just someone asking for directions. This was someone who desperately needed help. Without a moment's hesitation, David invited the stranger inside. He quickly brought fresh water, helped the man sit comfortably, and waited patiently as the traveler slowly regained his strength. The relief on the old man's face was immediate and profound. Then came the request that would test David's generosity like never before. The elderly traveler explained that he hadn't eaten anything in 2 full days. His stomach ached with hunger, and he wondered if David could spare even a small amount of food. David hurried to their kitchen to see what he could offer. But when he opened their food storage, his heart sank. There were only 2 pieces of bread remaining, bread that was meant to be his own lunch. This was literally all the food they had left in the house. Most people would have made excuses at this point. They would have said they had nothing to give, or suggested the traveler try elsewhere. But David's compassion ran deeper than his own hunger. He picked up both pieces of bread and headed back toward the stranger. Sarah intercepted him in the hallway, her voice filled with frustration and worry. She pointed out that this was his only meal for the day, that the stranger could surely find food elsewhere, but where would they go when their own stomachs were empty? Her concerns were completely valid and understandable. The elderly traveler could hear their conversation from the other room, but he sat quietly, waiting to see what would happen next. David listened to his wife's worries with patience and love. Then he spoke words that revealed the true nature of his character. He explained that hunger doesn't wait for convenient timing. This man had been without food for 2 days. How could they prioritize their own single meal over his desperate need? Somehow, some way, they would find food later. But right now, they had the power to ease someone's suffering, against his wife's protests. David walked to the traveler and placed both pieces of bread before him. He said these were the finest provisions their home could offer, and he meant every word. The hungry man ate gratefully and silently, and for the first time in days, peace returned to his weathered face. After finishing the meal and resting quietly, the elderly traveler prepared to continue his journey. But before leaving, he called David over and reached deep into his traveling bag. What he pulled out left David completely speechless. It was a bowl made of pure gold, gleaming brilliantly in the afternoon sunlight. The traveler placed this precious object directly into David's hands, explaining that it had been a gift from royalty just 1 week earlier. He had been searching for someone truly deserving of such a treasure. And today, he had found that person. But the traveler's words carried an even more powerful message than the valuable gift itself. He explained that this golden bowl represented something far greater than material wealth. It was a symbol of how the universe operates, how genuine acts of kindness create ripples that eventually return to us in magnificent ways. The traveler continued with wisdom that David would carry for the rest of his life. He spoke about the law of karma, explaining how selfless actions plant seeds that bloom into blessings at exactly the right moment. David's willingness to give without expecting anything in return had demonstrated the purest form of human compassion. As the stranger prepared to leave, he offered one final piece of guidance. The golden bowl was meant to remind David that goodness is always recognized and rewarded, but it should never change his generous spirit. The real treasure wasn't the gold, it was the kindness in David's heart that had attracted such abundance. David stood in his doorway, holding the precious bowl, watching the traveler disappear down the dusty road. Tears of joy streamed down his face as he realized the profound truth he had just experienced. His acts of compassion hadn't gone unnoticed by the universe. From that day forward, David's life transformed completely. The golden bowl brought financial security to his family, but more importantly, it strengthened his faith in the power of giving. He continued helping others with even greater enthusiasm, knowing that kindness creates an unstoppable cycle of positive energy. Sarah finally understood what her husband had known all along: when we give from the heart, we never truly lose anything. Instead, we create space for even greater abundance to flow into our lives. This story reveals a fundamental truth about how our world really works. Every act of kindness sends out invisible waves of positive energy that eventually find their way back to us. Sometimes the return is immediate, sometimes it takes years, but the universe never forgets a generous heart. The next time you have an opportunity to help someone, remember David's story. Remember that your kindness might be the miracle someone desperately needs, and that miracle will create another miracle in your own life. True wealth isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by what we're willing to give away. And those who understand this secret discover that the universe has infinite ways to bless a generous spirit. What act of kindness will you perform today?